All right, so with a new Avatar movie just around the corner, you know we had to do this. We're going to get you completely caught up on the entire saga of Jake Sully and the incredible world of Pandora. Let's just dive right in. I mean, this story is massive. It goes from these insane, glowing jungles to the deepest parts of the ocean. It's really all about this huge conflict over what home means, about family, and just survival. So whether you've seen the movies a dozen times or you're totally new to Pandora, don't worry, we've got you. Okay, so let's set the scene. We're way in the future, the year 2054. And things on Earth? Not great. It's basically dying. So humanity has gone looking for answers out in the stars, and they think they've hit the jackpot on this moon, a place called Pandora. But here's the thing. Pandora isn't just some dead rock they can strip for parts. No way. This place is alive. The air itself is toxic to humans, and it's home to the Na'vi. Now, these are 10-foot-tall, blue-skinned beings who are, well, they're literally connected to their planet. It's through this massive biological network they call Eywa. Think of it like a planet-wide consciousness. For them, every plant, every animal, it's all part of one single sacred being. And this slide, this just lays it all out, right? It's the core conflict. You've got the human corporation, the RDA, and all they want is this super valuable mineral called, get this, unobtainium. Then you have the Na'vi, who see that mining as like stabbing their god. It's not just a disagreement, it's a complete head-on collision of two totally different ways of seeing the universe. So that brings us right into the first movie. It's really a war for an entire world. But we see it all through the eyes of this one guy who gets stuck right in the middle of everything. And that guy is Jake Sully. He's an ex-Marine, a paraplegic, and he's kinda lost. But then he gets this unbelievable second chance. His twin brother was part of this Avatar program, and when he dies, Jake is asked to take his place. What does that mean? It means he gets to link his mind to a lab-grown Na'vi body. And for the first time in years, he can walk. He can run. He can feel the ground again. So right away, Jake is pulled in two completely different directions. You've got Dr. Grace, Augustine, and the science team saying, hey, use this body to make peace, to study, to learn. But then you've got Colonel Quaritch, the military hardass, who's like, no, you're my spy. Get me intel so we can wipe them out. And the carrot he's dangling? A very expensive surgery that would give Jake his real legs back. A tough spot to be in. But, you know, the more time Jake spends in his avatar body with the Metkayina clan, the more he learns from the amazing warrior Neytiri. He starts to change. He doesn't just fall in love with her, he falls in love with their entire world, their way of life. And that's when it hits him. He's on the wrong side. The mission he signed up for, the dream of getting his legs back, is actually a total nightmare for these people. Of course, his secret gets out. And when it does, all hell breaks loose. The RDA attacks, and any hope for a peaceful solution just evaporates. In the middle of all that chaos, Dr. Grace, the one person who really fought for peace, gets shot. She's fatally wounded, and her death is the point of no return. The talking is over. Now it's war. So Jake has betrayed them, and to get back in their good graces, he has to do something legendary. Literally. He finds and tames the Choric, this massive, terrifying predator that's basically a myth. By doing this, he becomes Torik Makto, a prophesied war chief. And just like that, he rallies all the Na'vi clans together to make one last stand. The final battle is absolutely insane. I mean, the planet itself joins the fight. And in the end, the Na'vi win. Neytiri gets her revenge, taking out Colonel Quaritch herself. Most of the humans are forced to pack up and go home. And Jake, he makes the ultimate choice. He leaves his human body forever and becomes fully Na'vi through one of their sacred rituals. Okay, let's fast forward. 15 years have passed, and the story changes. It's not about a war for worlds anymore. Now, it's about a war for a family. Jake Sully went from war chief to dad. And trust me, the stakes are about to get way, way more personal. And wow, what a family it is. Jake and Neytiri have their hands full. You've got Neteyam, the oldest. He's the golden child, the responsible one. Then there's Loak, the second son, who's a bit of a rebel and always feels like an outcast. Kiri is their adopted daughter, and she's a total mystery, somehow born from Grace's avatar and has this crazy connection to Eywa. Took is the baby of the family, just pure innocence. And then there's Spider. He's a human kid, left behind on Pandora, who they've basically raised. Oh, and he also happens to be Colonel Quaritch's son. Yeah, complicated. This period of peace they've had, it gets completely shattered. The Sky People are back, and this time, they're not just here for a mineral. They're here to stay. Earth is done for, so Pandora is the new plan for humanity, and they don't plan on asking nicely. But this time, it's not just business. It's personal. It's pure revenge. And the person leading the charge is a ghost from Jake's past. That's right, Colonel Quaritch is back from the dead. Sort of. Turns out the RDA backed up his memories before he died, and they've downloaded them into a brand new avatar body. So now he's a recombinant, all the ruthlessness of Quaritch, but in a 10-foot-tall Na'vi body. And he has one single mission: find and kill Jake Sully. So Jake knows that as long as he's there, Quaritch will hunt him, and that puts everyone he loves in the crosshairs. So he makes this heart-wrenching decision. He gives up his role as chief and decides the only way to protect his people is to leave. He takes his family and flees, hoping to find safety with the Metkayina, the reef people who live by the ocean. But of course, you can't run forever. Quaritch finds them. And in the fight that follows, the absolute worst thing that can happen to a parent happens. Jake's oldest son, the golden child, Neteyam, is killed. The cost of this war just became unbearable. Jake is just broken. Fueled by pure grief and rage, he goes after Quaritch. No more running. The fight is just savage, a one-on-one battle to the death. And Jake finally gets the upper hand, leaving Quaritch to drown in a sinking ship. It looks like it's finally truly over.
But wait, as Quaritch is sinking, someone else is moving through that wreckage. Someone who is completely torn about what to do, pulled by a connection they just can't ignore.
And it's Spider. It's Quaritch's human son. He saves him. He pulls his biological father from the brink of death, the same man who just killed his brother and tore his family apart. But then, in the very next breath, he rejects him and goes back to the Sullys. This one moment, this one act of mercy, oh man, it just sets up so much conflict for what's next. So that's where we leave off. The Sullys have a new home, sure, but their family is fractured. They are absolutely broken, and all the pieces are on the board for the next, even bigger war. So let's just recap the mess they're in, right? The whole family is just swimming in grief for Neteyam. Neytiri really doesn't trust Spider. And the crazy part is, she has no clue he's the reason Quaritch is still breathing. And speaking of Quaritch, he's out there, he's alive, and he's probably angrier than ever. And as if that's not enough, we're hearing whispers of a whole new threat, the Ash People, a volcanic Na'vi clan that's supposed to be not so friendly. So it all comes down to this, doesn't it? With a new fire literally on the horizon, can the Sully family actually hold it together? Or is the secret that Spider's carrying, is that the thing that's going to burn them all down from the inside out? I guess we're about to find out.